The American robin is one of the most common birds in North America. You've probably seen one in your backyard or been woken up by one before sunrise. But did you know this iconic bird is also Wisconsin's state bird? For this month's Chirp Chat, Lake Effect's Excrit Nunez is joined by Aubrey Fulsis, an environmental educator at the Schlitz Audubon Nature Center. She shares facts about the American robin and how it became a symbol for the state.
This month marks 76 years since the American robin became Wisconsin's state bird. So for today's episode of Chirp Chat, I thought it'd be nice to highlight this classic songbird. So Aubrey, I'm curious, how did the American robin become Wisconsin's state bird in the first place?
So the American robin became our state bird going all the way back in 1926 when the State Federation of Women's Clubs sponsored a bird study program in Wisconsin public schools. So they basically sponsored a program so children can learn more about the birds that they see in their neighborhoods. And part of that program was allowing the kids to vote for a state bird. And the robin received twice as many votes as any other bird. So it was really those school children who chose it in 1926, but it did not become the official state bird by, government decree until 1949.
Wow. Okay, so imagine if everything was just picked by second graders.
I mean, the world would be maybe a better place if they could just choose all of our state everything.
So is Wisconsin the only state that claims the robin or the American robin as its state bird?
There are a couple other states, Michigan and Connecticut also have the American robin, and the American robin can be found in almost every single state in the United States. It's found all over the continent of North America.
Wow.
So pretty much any state could lay a claim to it if they wanted to.
So can you describe some of the characteristics of the American robin?
So the American robin, it's one of our larger songbirds, and it's very visible, especially in the spring and summer, because it is a ground forager. So it's going to be hopping around the ground. It really loves short grasses, and it's part of the thrush family. So it's actually closely related to birds like bluebirds, and then some of our more elusive wood thrush and hermit thrush, which are its relatives you really only find tucked away in the forest. It has a bright orange-ish underbelly, chest and belly, and then a slate gray wings, and then a darker head.
And you said it's part of the thrush family. Does that have anything to do with how beautiful its song is?
Yes. So thrushes are really known for their music, their songs that they make. And part of the reason they're able to do that is they actually are able to sing using multiple vocal cords. So they can sing multiple notes at once and kind of layer them on top of each other to create this really melodious warbling sound. It's a very clear tone, very beautiful, lots of different notes that they go in between.
And so I personally find the American robin, and this could be a hot take, but I find it underrated. Growing up in Arizona for me, like you said, they're found pretty everywhere all over the country, but I didn't really notice them growing up. So something that I like about them is watching them forage for food.
Yes.
So that leads me to my next question is, what type of food do they eat?
So robins, they really eat kind of two main food groups. They eat a lot of our like softer invertebrates, so think earthworms, slugs, things like that. And then they also really love berries. So in the spring and summer, once the ground thaws, they're going to be all over the ground searching for those worms that they're able to peck out with their beak. And they really search for them using visual cues, but there is some studies that think that they listen for them a little bit as well. It's kind of a really hot debate in the science world. It's a lot of scientists are trying to figure out how exactly do they know exactly where those worms are underground. And yeah, I also think they're underrated. I think we almost take them for granted because they're so common here, and they are one of the most common songbirds in North America. And once you start looking for them, you really do see them all over the place. And they're very fun to watch when they're hopping around.
Yeah.
They turn their head to look down using one of their eyes to really like peer in and look for those bugs and pull them up. So
yeah, I think it's really interesting how they're so common yet so complex that there's still stuff that we don't know about them.
Yes.
So when I moved to Wisconsin, I've heard that some people believe that American robins are the first sign of spring. But are they really? Or can you tell me about their migration patterns?
So robins do migrate, but their migration can be anywhere from a really short migration distance where they just join a flock and hang out in the woods as opposed to in a park or a backyard, or it can be a long migration where they're traveling from Canada all the way down to the southern United States. It really depends kind of on the bird, on the region that they're in. So in our area in Wisconsin, we do see them all year long. We just see them in different habitats. So in the wintertime, we will get flocks of 15 to 20 robins who will hang out kind of deep in the forest, and that's because they're looking for berries. So they're going to be moving to where the food is. So they might have to travel a little bit further away to get to those berries because that's mainly their source of food in the wintertime.
That makes sense. So worms in the spring and summer, berries in the winter.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So something else that is interesting about them, and you mentioned this, is their abundance.
Yes.
So how does that even happen? Like, why is there so many American robins here?
American robins are a great story of adaptation. They love foraging in short grass. And think of how much short grass we have now in our backyards, in our parks, in pretty much everywhere. Anywhere we mow the lawn, the robins are like, oh, that's a great place to forage. So they've really adapted well to being in urban and suburban environments. They also will build their nests. Now, normally they'll build their nests in shorter trees, but they can build them on eaves or in gutters. You know, they're really not too picky about where they're building their nests, which also helps them adapt. So they really can be found in a lot of areas that humans have kind of taken over. We haven't really pushed them out. Another reason is because they actually can have 1 to 3 broods of babies a year.
Oh, wow.
So basically they can raise 3 different sets of babies in a season, whereas a lot of other songbirds maybe only raise 1. So that just also really helps their numbers out.
Yeah, a lot of baby robins out there.
A lot. And they're one of the earliest to start as well, which is why people think of them as a sign of spring, because they are one of the first songbirds to start breeding. So you start to hear them in March and they're already laying eggs by April.
And their calls must be, their mating calls.
Yes. And then the males are the only ones who sing, and they will sing as soon as there's a little bit of light in the sky. I've been woken up at 4 a.m. by robins outside my window before, and they like to sing all day long, attracting females to their territory.
Yeah. And going back a little bit to their characteristics, that reminded me, is there a visual difference between the males and females?
There is. It's not like really, really bold compared to some other songbirds. The big visual difference is the females are a little bit more pale. So they're not quite as a bold coloration. Their heads are a little bit lighter as opposed to kind of the dark, almost black heads of the male. But you really have to pause and watch them for a while to tell, although it is only the females that sit on the nest. So if you do see a nest, it's going to be the mom on the eggs.
That makes sense. So back to what we were talking about with the abundance of robins or American robins, that wasn't always the case, was it? Can you tell me more about that?
So they, along with a lot of other birds, saw a big drop in their populations due to DDT. So a common pesticide that was used pre-1970 because it affected bugs. And as we know, a lot of robins, that's their main diet, and that's what they're feeding their chicks. That's what they're eating. So that caused a great decline in their populations. But with the banning of DDT, and then with their ability to just kind of adapt to, urban areas, their populations have really rebounded. Now, they do still face some issues with pesticides because they're foraging in people's lawns. So if people are using a lot of pesticides or herbicides in their lawns, that can also affect the robins as well.
Okay, so that's something to keep in mind for the people listening. Okay, so I kind of want to go into some ideas of, if the American robin wasn't Wisconsin's state bird, what could be?
Yeah.
I looked into this and I pulled up a blog post from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. They said, can eBird help choose better state birds?
Yeah.
And so they looked at eBird data to find unique connections between the states and the birds that live there. And they suggested that the rose-breasted grosbeak would be a great pick as Wisconsin's state bird. What do you think?
So I do love the rose-breasted grosbeak, and I also did a little research and read that study, and the reason they chose that is because we have the highest breeding population of rose-breasted grosbeaks, but that's more in the northern part of the state. We do get them here, but they're a little bit less common. One thing I love about the American robin is its accessibility. Anybody can see an American robin. You don't have to go voyage into the forest or go to a unique habitat to see one. It's a bird that anyone can see just by looking in their backyard. And that's how people get into birding, is by just noticing what birds live in their neighborhood. And that's what I love about robins. So while I do love rose-breasted grosbeaks, they are a little bit less common. So that would be my only stickler with maybe choosing them, is because we don't see them as often, at least in this part of the state. They're a little bit more common up north.
No, yeah, I think that is a valid take. And I wonder, have you talked to like other birders about this before? Like, have you heard other takes from other people?
Yeah, so we've been discussing this. It's an interesting concept. So state birds, like I said, the robin, it is the state bird for a couple of other states. It'd be nice if we could, choose something a little bit more unique. And I personally would love if our state bird could be reflective of our relationship with the water, our relationship with the Great Lakes, with all of our different lakes and ponds and rivers. But I also still want it to be accessible. So something like even a simple mallard or a great blue heron, something that might be a little bit more common to see, but still relies on our lakes and wetlands, I think would be interesting. We've heard some push for maybe like a sandhill crane, because we do have the International Crane Foundation that works really hard on, upping their populations, and they're a really, really fun bird in the state as well. It's tough because you want it to be something that people can see, but then you still want it to be something that is special to our state.
Right, that's representative of who we are as Wisconsinites. So we have reached the end of Chirp Chat. I usually ask people to highlight a bird for the month, but I do want to ask you, what do you think should be Wisconsin's state bird?
I mean, it's a tough question because I love all birds, and I do think the robin is a lot of fun. I do think it does make a good state bird because it's so accessible. But my vote, like I said, I want it to be reflective of our relationship with the lakes and be accessible. So I might just have to go with the mallard. A good old-fashioned duck that you find out at the ponds and at the parks.
Can you describe the mallard?
Yes. So mallards are kind of the quintessential wild duck. The males have that bright green head. The females are going to be a little bit more brown, drab colored. And they are very common in our waterways. They do migrate, but they can also stick around if they can get enough food because they're omnivores. So you really can find them in some places all year long if the water's not frozen. And, ducklings are just some of the cutest birds you can see.
I think the mallard is a great pick. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. So yeah, Aubrey, thanks again for telling me about the American robin and helping me learn more. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I love talking birds.
Aubrey Fulsis is an environmental educator and the family programs lead at the Schlitz Audubon Nature Center. She spoke with Lake Effect's X-Grit Nunez for a monthly series we call Chirp Chat, which you can find as a podcast wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. And just like Chirp Chat, Lake Effect is also a podcast. Download episodes and listen to us on demand while you're on the go.